Tonight we're going to be talking about how you like the person that you love. Because indeed, while we may know that we love someone, turns out you may not really like them very much at all. And that can contribute to whether or not your love and relationship with anything, human being, object, entity, no matter what it may be, whether you like it or not, may hold the secret to whether your relationship will last the test of time, or maybe it will flutter and die away just like your wonderful honeymoon did. In fact, many people love their spouses, but don't like their spouses. And that's why that love does not sustain them for 10, 20, 30, or 40 years. But let's back up a little bit and start off with a short story. There was once a salesman who approached a home and heard a big commotion inside. The salesman, undaunted by the big commotion, approached, knocked on the door. The door was opened by a gentleman. The salesman asks, "Can I speak with the master of the home?" "Well, sir," the man replied, "you'll have to wait around because that's the issue we're figuring out right now." So in reality, sometimes who is in charge is often something we discuss and debate and argue constantly. And that's not because there's a lack of love, but sometimes we're trying to simply figure out, where do we fall into this picture? Where do we respect one another? Whose domain starts where and ends where not? To understand the difference between liking and loving, we're going to take a very unique Jewish example, and that's the tragedy that took place over 1,000 years ago to the students of Rabbi Akiva. Right now, we're in a very unique period in the Jewish calendar, a special period in between the holiday of Passover, when we celebrate leaving Egypt, and the holiday of Shavuot, when we celebrate the receiving of the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai. During this time, this 49-day period, or 7-week period, it is traditional that we count the Omer being the barley offering brought in the temple during this time. We count each day individually. And we count 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, so on and so forth, until we count the 49th day on the day when the Torah was given on Mount Sinai. Now, counting of the Omer also coincides with a special, tragic event that took place with Rabbi Akiva, as I mentioned. Rabbi Akiva was a scholar that came from very humble beginnings. In fact, it says that he didn't even read the Aleph Bet until he was 40 years old. And yet, he went on to master the Talmud and many of the other aspects of Jewish life and Jewish religion, and developed a following of thousands of students. In fact, it says that there were 12,000 pairs of students that he developed. So a large, large following. Unfortunately, it also tells us in the Talmud that his students died suddenly 1 year at this time. All of his thousands of students passed away. It wasn't due to a circumstance, but rather because they lacked a very, very important quality. And that was the quality of love for your fellow. And that is why during this time period it is a quasi-mourning for the Jewish people. There are customs related to not listening to live music, customs that prevent us from marrying one another, even cutting our hair in many traditions. So get used to this wonderful haircut that you see now, because in 3 weeks I may look a little more overgrown. All of these traditions are designed to impact our lives and remind us that there was a major tragedy that took place some 1900 years ago. Now, it is true, Jewish tradition does celebrate the past, but only when it has something profound and impactful to teach us here in the present. Which begs the question, why is this tragedy, one of hundreds of tragedies that befell the Jewish people over the centuries, over the millennia, why is this tragedy so important that we still commemorate it with some form of mourning over 1900 years later? So the obvious question the monkey, the elephant in the room, is how is it that these prominent students, these disciples of Rabbi Akiva, righteous and holy men, could die for their lack of love for one another? How is it that they didn't have love and respect for one another? And furthermore, their teacher, their guide, their master, Rabbi Akiva himself, professed that love for your fellow is the fundamental point of the entire Torah. The fundamental principle, as it says, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow like yourself. Rabbi Akiva says this is the fundamental principle of the Torah. And yet his students, and we're not talking about students in name only, the students that are sitting in the back of the classroom, spending their time sleeping and propping themselves up with their pencils. We're talking about real prime disciples. How is it that they could have lost this point that love of your fellow is everything? How could they have been prime students and yet lacked such a basic, fundamental concept? So to understand their mistake, to understand where and how they went wrong, we have to understand that there is a difference between loving something and liking something. As I alluded to in the introduction tonight, or as is known in the Hebrew words, kavod, which means honor or respect, to like something, or ahava, which means love, to love. These are two totally different concepts, both very important and very fundamental. And for every person to have a successful relationship with another individual, be it a spouse, parent, child, friend, acquaintance, or partner, you have to have both of these fundamental concepts, like and love. How do these concepts feed into one another? And why is it so important that we like something and love it at the same time? In popular society, it's known today that love is maybe a more powerful term. Like might be a more minimalistic term. I like you, but I don't know if I love you. That's a common issue that men have. It's hard for them to say the words, I love you. We know that. Ladies, if you're listening to this, give them a chance. But the reality is that like is not a lesser word for love. It is something completely and entirely different. When one says, I love you, one is basically saying that I share something in common with you. There is something that brings us and binds us together. And it's that shared unity that expresses itself in my love. My brother, I love my brother. I don't always like my brother. I may disagree with some of the actions that he takes. My brother manages some of my money, a very small, minuscule, little investment portfolio. So when he loses some of that money, I don't like him very much, but I still love him just the same. And the reason is because I love that shared connection. We both come from the same parents. We have similar genes and so on, similar history. And that brings about this unity. And when I concentrate on that, I know this is a love. It transcends logic sometimes. It transcends rationale. It's something that's constantly there because of what we share in common. Like, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite. When we like something, we like its distinctness. We like the fact that this is different, yet it contributes and enhances my life in some way. It augments and complements things that I currently have. That's what attracts us to liking something. If you like a pair of shoes, it's because you don't have that pair of shoes. And so therefore, when I buy this pair of shoes and I add it to my collection, I bring something unique and distinct into my collection, and now it will complement my feet, it will complement my appearance, complement the blouse that I just got. And this is a very important lesson for men to learn, is that a woman may like a pair of shoes that may look to you just like another pair of shoes that she just purchased. That's quite possible. But in some way, she has found that this pair of shoes adds to her in a way the other pair does not. And that's why she likes that pair. When two people meet They are in La La Land. Each one looks into the other's eyes and they melt at only a simple touch, and words mean nothing. In that moment, they may feel drunk on love, right? Punch drunk love. Or as you commonly hear the term, fall in love. Those are accurate terms because they reflect that the fact that these two people have found something that they share in common, some sort of bond, and that bond brings about this love between them. Is it logical? Is it rational? Does it deal with them individually as human beings? Maybe, and maybe not. But it does emphasize their commonalities, and that is what brings them together. And in that moment, nothing else matters. They may like one music, he may like a different kind of music, she may like dairy foods, he may like meat foods, maybe she's vegan, maybe he's a carnivore, who knows? He's an introvert, she's extroverted, he's loud, she's quiet. All of those small details in that relationship are seemingly insignificant because what counts at this point is their love, their shared commonality. So they're blind to everything else that exists. The problem starts when they come out of the clouds. When they come out of the clouds and the love starts to land or ground itself as life takes over, and it does for every couple, for every relationship, they start to see that they are different, that they are distinct. I like to fold my laundry this way. She likes to fold her laundry that way. I like my fork here, she likes her fork there, toilet seat up, down, and everything in between. And it's at that point when relationships get truly tested. But how is that possible, Rabbi? They were in love. I saw that they couldn't stop looking at each other and holding each other's hands. And the answer is, it wasn't a facade. That was love, and this is like. The Kotzker Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Morgenstern, who lived in the late 1700s, very, very wise man, but a very pragmatic rabbi at the same time. He once said, powerful statement, if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I, you are you, and now we can sit down and talk. And while that may seem like a little bit of a play on words, and it truly is, it is a very basic and simple concept. Love is based on the idea that you and I are one. But respect, liking someone, means that we recognize that you have the right to be who you are, and I have the right to be who I am. That we are not just one, we are also individuals, we are also distinct, and different in many ways. So I am I, and you are you, and that's okay. I respect who you are, I respect your distinctness, your individuality, I respect how you are different than me, and I ask that you respect me for who I am as well. When we simply emphasize our love, we lose sight of all of these other aspects of our relationship, and it's to our detriment. Because we have never established boundaries, we have never established how two different people can live a life together. And that's why the Rebbe, Reb Kotzker, said that it's important to understand that I am I, and you are you. And that's okay. It is for this reason that in our relationships, in the traditional Chabad world, we spend time initially getting to know a potential spouse, partner, before there's any physical contact whatsoever. Rabbi, but how could you do that? How do you not go and live with this person first? And how do you know that it's the right one in only a month? You haven't spent any time with them. The truth is that it's not about that physical connection yet. Initially, we don't want to fall in love with one another at the drop of a hat, because then we will lose the important part of liking each other. So, in a Chabad relationship, two people, a boy and a girl, will date, and they will see that they like one another. We are distinct. This is what I enjoy. This is what you enjoy. Here are my goals. Here are your goals. They'll see where they connect and where there are commonalities and where there are differences. And they'll choose and decide, logically and rationally, are those commonalities strong enough? Are those differences things that can be respected and appreciated? And if they are, then they can allow this love to grow and grow and grow, because they also like and respect each other. But if it's all about the physical contact, the intimacy, the moment, then it's never given an opportunity to develop and to respect and to like one another. And that is a recipe for long-term disaster. That is why today you'll find more and more people are looking at relationships from a much more logical and rational perspective than they used to. It's not just about someone that can feed my gene pool. 6 foot tall, dark, handsome, blonde, blue-eyed. We now understand that that doesn't take us to where we want to go. In life, there's always going to be changes. The definition of life is fluctuation. Human beings were created to move. Angels, they're stationary. They don't go up, they don't go down. But we are like the market, climbing and rising, ebbing and flowing. That is the nature of life. It's something that we have to accept and learn to deal with. So, it is true that we may give birth to children, and we love our children. Of course we do. But whether or not we like our children will depend upon us. It'll depend upon us and our relationship with them. If you simply take your relationship with your child or with your spouse for granted, I love that person. I don't have to tell them how much I love them. I don't have to understand what makes them tick or why they're different and unique or what their specific needs are today, different than they may have been yesterday. That's not important because I love them. You're doing yourself and the other individual a huge disservice. Because the reality is that when people change, we have to understand that and appreciate that. We have to learn to like it. And that comes through time and through patience and through investment. Investing our knowledge, our understanding, our energy with that individual. Love does not overshadow like. And simply sharing a life with someone, having a roommate for a long period of time, or being someone's parent or child, does not mean that your respect, your likeness, your affinity for that person has grown or evolved. It requires conscious thought. We have to sit and think about it. Do I understand what this person's perspective is? Can I appreciate that they are different than me? That they need different things in their life? That they respond, that they react, that they intellectualize, that they emote differently than I do? That they're not the same person they were 5 or 10 years ago, or 10 minutes ago. Do I take the time to do that? If I don't, then yes, I may love them, but that relationship may be doomed because I don't take the time to like them. So, someone once asked, what is the difference between an anti-Semite and a Jewish person? Right? After all, they both don't like Jews. I mean, let's face it. We are, to a large degree, self-hating. How many times will you speak to people that are Jewish and they say, I don't like doing business with Jews. I don't like hanging out where there's too many Jewish people. So really, what is the difference between them and someone who's anti-Semitic and just doesn't like Jews, period? The answer is, ask any anti-Semitic person his opinion on the Jewish people, and he will tell you that the Jewish people are responsible for every problem in society, that they're the vermin of the earth, they're aggressive occupiers, stingy billionaires, they run countries and communism, they're responsible for global warming, they're responsible for the problems in Sudan, Afghanistan, the Congo, Syria, and everywhere in between. Like Winston Churchill once said, An anti-Semite is someone who hates Jews more than is necessary. And he was being honest. But if you ask this anti-Semite, who hates Jews absolutely, why does he use Dr. Goldberg as his cardiologist, Mr. Klein as his attorney, Mr. Berkowitz as his accountant, Steve Cohen as his travel agent, and Mr. Weiss as his golf buddy? And what will he tell you? No, these guys, they're the exception. They're honest, they're decent, upstanding, they're good people. But most Jews, they're not like them. These guys, they happen to be different. That's the anti-Semite. Take the Jew, on the other hand. A Jewish guy, you ask him about his relationship with his faith, with his people, with his land. I love the Jewish people. I'm such a Jew at heart. I wear it on my sleeve. I support Israel. I support Jewish charities. Absolutely, it's my people. I feel at home. So on and so forth. But if you ask him about the Jewish guy sitting next to him, that guy, oh, a ganev, a thief. The other shmendrik, a liar. And why don't you use this guy for your real estate agent? Oh, because that guy, you can never trust him. A lowlife, a this, a that. So, how is it that the Jew has this perspective and the anti-Semite has this perspective? Now we can understand it very, very clearly and very simply. The anti-Semite doesn't love Jews. In fact, maybe he even hates them. But he likes the 5 or 6 people that help him. Those 5 or 6 Jews, he knows them. He understands their distinctness. He understands them as individuals, and therefore, he likes them. But when you talk about a shared commonality between him and the Jewish people, there's none. So he has no love for Jewish people. The self-hating Jew, on the other hand, he loves the Jewish people. They're his people. He connects. He feels that common boundary that binds them together. He feels it in his heart, in his mind. And yet, when you talk about the specifics, the individuals that are in his life, those Jewish people, he knows and understands their distinct individual qualities, and that's why he hates them. This guy does that, and that guy does this, and no one's as good as me, and so on and so forth. So he may love the Jews, but in reality, he doesn't like very many of them at all. This is where we see quite clearly that loving and liking are 2 distinct but important components to make a relationship work. We have to understand that we are one people, we are one nation, joined together by our commonalities, our shared histories, but also by our distinct and unique individual abilities. We have to understand that the Jew sitting next to us, he is different than me. But that's a great thing, because he brings something to this world, to the table, that I do not. He excels in areas that I can't. He is the puzzle piece that fits with my puzzle piece. And if not for him, this world, the Jewish people, would be missing something. That is why, when it comes to the confession that we say on Yom Kippur, we start saying and listing transgressions that we may have never done before. But in reality, we have committed them in some way, because our shared brethren and sisters, those that are joined together with us, they may have committed them. And in some way, shape, or form, we are all part of that whole. We share an essential bond, a soulful connection, both as part of something greater than us, but also as a group of individuals. History, destiny, biology, fate, you can call it whatever you want. Yes, they have brought us together. And for that we may love one another, but it's time to take it to the next level. It's time to recognize that in their individual ways, they add in places we cannot. As Jackie Mason once says, when 2 Jews meet, within 3 minutes, they've already established a familiar relationship. Yeah, my cousin, yeah, he owned the pizza shop, and your friend, he went there and he did it, right? But we have to understand that it happens on an individual basis as well. Imagine if you had a terrible accident. Terrible accident. and you were cutting something, piece of wood, right, for the shofar factory. We conduct a beautiful, beautiful shofar factory around the time of Rosh Hashanah, and while you're cutting one of the ram's horns, we work with ram's horns, which require heavy-duty sawing. God forbid someone cuts their finger. So the left hand holding the saw cut the right hand's finger. What would happen? Would the right hand start screaming at the left hand? How dare you cut my finger? What are you thinking? No, of course not. And if you did, we'd have you committed. Because you understand that this is all part of one existence. It's me. It's my hands. So therefore, one person made a mistake. We made a mistake. It wasn't the best thing. We learn from it. We make sure that the mistake doesn't happen again. That has to be our perspective when dealing with our fellow brethren. We have a shared fate. We have a shared history. We're joined together. We may love each other. It's time to start liking and respecting one another as well. It is a challenge. It is a challenge. It's not easy, and no one's saying that this is easy, because at the end of the day, a human being is created distinctly. I see only what my two eyes show me. And my two eyes, they're programmed into my brain. So if my brain thinks a certain way, my body tends to feel a certain way and act a certain way, my eyes naturally will see and process based on my personal feelings, on my selfish perspective of life. And if I don't take the time to reprogram the way I look at other people, I will end up applying my ways, my rules for life, to them. And that is how we fail to develop respect, because respect requires us to take a step back and say, my laws, my rules don't necessarily apply. They may think differently. They may feel differently. They may act and implement differently, and that's okay. In fact, it's great. Because if I've got 10 people working on a building, I don't need 10 people doing exactly the same thing. I need each one being an expert in different fields. I need an electrician. I need a plumber. I need a carpenter. I need a roofer. I need someone that does flooring, a general contractor. I need all of those people to come together with their own individual expertise to make this a truly beautiful habitat for humanity. So ask yourself this question. Why is it that couples marry and truly find bliss, but then get divorced a few years later? Is love enough to guide us in raising and educating our children? The fact that we just love them? And do we look at the Jewish nation as a whole and feel a tremendous love, but then when we look at specific individual Jews, we find that we really don't like them very much? These are some of the challenges that we face when it comes to liking and respecting our friends, our family, and our brethren across the world. Now let's take a closer look at the students of Rabbi Akiva. If you remember, we talked about the 20,000 students of Rabbi Akiva that passed away during this time in between Passover and Shavuot. What were some of the mistakes that we made now that we've explored the difference between liking and loving? What were some of the mistakes that these people made? These were tremendous rabbis, not average rabbis, but tremendous rabbis with vast knowledge and understanding, respect for tradition, and without question, they understood what it means to love one another. And they definitely knew how important it was to their master, to their teacher. So how is it that they made such a grave and fundamental mistake? And it comes down to something very basic. They only saw what they saw through their eyes. When they interpreted something from their teacher, they felt this was the correct perspective on Rabbi Akiva, their teacher's statement. They could not see and therefore not appreciate any other perspective. Because they loved their brethren, right? Why did they love them? Because they were fellow Jews. They were fellow students of Rabbi Akiva. They could not bear to see anyone else interpret Rabbi Akiva's statement differently. Hypocrisy, hearsay. To take our beloved teacher's statement and see it through different eyes couldn't be fathomed. And so any deviation that they saw from their fellows was not tolerated. It couldn't be understood in the slightest example. And this naturally caused them to develop not only a lack of love, but eventually even a hatred between them and their brethren. Because yes, they did love each other. They truly, truly did. And not in a false way, but in a real way. They understood the powerful bonds that brought them together. But they did not like one another. They didn't like one another. They said, "Who are you to interpret something in such a vastly wrong manner? To take the words of our holy teacher and totally misconstrue it. That is intolerable. That cannot be accepted." And so here we have powerful, prominent rabbis loving but not liking. And we're reminded again how important those two concepts have to fit together. There's a story that's told about the Austrian Emperor Joseph II, who was truly one of the greatest composers. He managed to listen to Amadeus Mozart and was profoundly impressed by his work, as I'm sure we are till this very day. Yet when he met Mozart, he asked him some very basic question. He says, "Listen, your work is amazing, profound, complicated, nuanced, but why can't you just take a few notes out? Then it would be absolute perfection. Absolute perfection. Just a few notes." And you know what Mozart responded? "Which few did you have in mind?" It's a beautiful orchestra. It's a symphony. How can you possibly protect and preserve this amazing masterpiece, this beautiful symphony, if you start to take out some of the notes? If you change it, where are you going to take out? From the beginning, from the middle, from the end? It doesn't work. The symphony is built on having all these beautiful, distinct, and different notes and seeing how they come together as this amazing mosaic. And only then did Mozart make his mark in the music world. Same too, every individual is another note. Together, each student presented a different perspective, and that is what brought together this amazing work of Rabbi Akiva. That is how he made such an impact on Jewish life and Jewish philosophy, because he had students with so many different perspectives, thousands of different nuanced ways of looking at some of the lessons that he had taught. And yet they missed that simple idea. And it proved costly. It proved very costly. Because without liking one another, they were unable to live with one another, and they were judged very harshly. But the reality is that life cannot succeed without respect. It cannot. So maybe these poor students, they lost their lives, but other death appears in relationships. Divorce is a form of death. It is a point where the relationship ceases to exist. It ceases to live. And that comes about, again, because of this lack of respect, the lack of liking one another. When we see another human being, we have to be reminded that they have two general qualities. Number one, they share a commonality with me, and for that I love them. We come from the same place. We share so much history. We share a philosophy and a perspective and a way of life. We are truly one, and for that I love you. But at the same time, you're different. You're more creative. You're more ingenious. You have a very straight way of looking at things. You're able to take a complex idea and simplify it. You have a love and a way of showing kindness and emotion that baffles me. We have to understand that those distinct qualities make us just as powerful and just as strong as our shared love for one another. That's how we look at another human being. And that's why if you see a multitude of Jewish people, there's a special blessing that you say. You say, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, who is the sage of secrets." That you see there are so many different minds. God, wow, it's amazing. You created millions of people with different and unique ways of looking at things, and yet they fit together like such a beautiful mosaic. There's a story that's told about a beautiful mosaic, an amazing story. Dr. Zev Maghen, who is a lecturer in Arabic and Islamic studies at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, Israel, once told the story about his own grandfather. His grandfather was Iranian. Many, many Jews used to live in Iran or in Persia, even before that. His grandfather was from a small town in a village called Kashan, which is about 150 miles south of Tehran. His grandfather once told him the story that at the time of his grandfather's grandfather, the early part of the 19th century, there was a Jewish merchant that was living in Kashan. And this Jewish merchant had some business dealings with one of the local Muslims, and the local Muslim man felt that the Jewish person overcharged him for something. It wasn't indeed the case, but hey, real events never hold us back from being liable. So he went to the prince, the governor of the region. It was called the Ka'im Makam. And he told this regional governor, this Jewish man overcharged me. He's stealing from me. And in fact, this is the way all Jews do business. And therefore, you should tell them that either they convert to Islam or they are put to death. Seems illogical and irrational to you, but to the regional governor, it made perfect sense. So he called the elders of the city, of the village of Kashan. He called them to the palace and he said, here are the charges that have been raised, and therefore either you convert to Islam and show remorse for your Jewish thievery ways, or you will simply be put to death. You have 3 weeks to decide. Of course, immediately the elders gathered together and started to consider what were their options, and there weren't any good ones. They prayed and they fasted and they said psalms. They didn't know what to do. After days of baffled debate, they were at a total standstill. The wife of the chief rabbi came into the room and after serving some tea said, before you head over to the governor's palace in 2 weeks, stop by here. We want to contribute something to your cause. Okay. So 2 weeks came. The rabbis stopped by the chief rabbi's home, and there, behold, the chief rabbi's wife presented them with 2 beautiful, beautiful Persian rugs. The woman, along with some of her sisters and daughters, had spent nights preparing and weaving by hand these amazing, amazing tapestries. They were both rolled up, given to the rabbi and the delegation, and off they went to the governor's palace. They arrive at the governor's palace, and the governor looks at them and says, I don't even know why you're here wasting my time. I have made it quite simple. Either you convert to Islam, or you shall be put to death. But because you've traveled a long way, I'll grant you a few minutes before I ask for your decision. The rabbi starts and says, Dear governor, master, please understand that we come here out of respect and appreciation for the great and kindness that you've shown us over many, many years, and we have always pledged to be loyal citizens, but the governor stopped him. Please stop! Where do you think you're getting with this? Get on with it. So the rabbi continued. Here we humbly present before you these 2 beautiful gifts. Please consider which one you would like to accept. And with that, they opened up these 2 rugs, and one rug was amazing. Hues of scarlet and red, special different tones of blue and purple mixed together with gold, shimmering gold designs and floral arrangements, an absolute breathtaking masterpiece of a rug. And the other rug was red, plain red. The governor took one look at the 2 rugs, and he turned to them and started screaming, Have you lost your minds? Do you think I am such an idiot that I would even consider for a moment to choose this simple red rug when you have offered me this amazing masterpiece of a tapestry? I should kill you just for your idiocy. The rabbi calmly stepped forward and said, Please understand that this beautiful mosaic of a rug, that represents your community today. Your community today has Christians and Muslims and Armenians and Messianians and Islamic people and Jewish people. And it is a beautiful mosaic that fits together in one wonderful tapestry. If you choose to annihilate us, your community, your region, your land will eventually look like this second rug. And with that, the governor changed his decree and allowed them to live. Because he understood that the distinctness, the differences, is what brought about the beauty. Did he love the Jews after that? No, definitely not. But he liked and respected the fact that they were different and that they contributed in their own unique, individual way. Of course, the Hebrew month right now is Iyar. And it is we're kind of in this 3-month period. During the Hebrew month of Nisan, we begin Passover, we begin this counting period, then we have this month of Iyar, and then we have the month of Sivan, which is when we celebrate Shavuot, the holiday when the 10 Commandments were given. Interestingly enough, we do believe in horoscopes. Jewish tradition believes in horoscopes, similar signs to the horoscopes that you'll find in modern society. These different horoscopes have different meanings in Jewish philosophy, yet horoscopes still can be used to learn quite amazing concepts. So the horoscope for the first month of the 3 is the ram. The ram represents a herd animal, right? Ram lives with a bunch of other animals. They travel as a pack. It really reflects on the concept of love, understanding our commonality, our shared qualities, just like the ram, and joining together with people, not necessarily seeing the differences. Then we have the third month of Sivan, the month when we receive the 10 Commandments. During that month, we start to reflect the twins. And the twins are a representation of the fact that here you have 2 individuals, but they are distinct and they are different. And this reminds us that this journey that we are experiencing from Passover to the holiday of Shavuot, this 49-day journey, this remembrance of those 20,000 Jewish students that died, is not simply being done for commemorative purposes. It is an opportunity, it is a time in our year, in our lives, when we sit down and we ask ourselves, do we simply love or do we also like? In our relationships, with our partners, our spouses, our parents, our friends, everyone. Do we respect or do we simply cover over our differences? Every day we count the Omer. We say this is the first day. This is the second day. And once we've completed a week, it's very interesting. We say today is the 12th day, which is 1 week and 5 days. And do you know why? Because we are combining the love and like, the general and the individual. Today is a day for itself, but it's also part of a week. We love each other and we like each other at the same time. And that is how we create long-term relationships that will survive the tests. Yes, we have a common bond. We share that. But do we appreciate what makes us different? Can we look at our partner, can we look at our fellow and say, we have so much that binds us together, and yet we are so different and so unique and so individual. And that is great, because without you, I can't get it done. We couldn't get it done. The world could not accomplish what it needs to accomplish without you, without your distinct individual contributions. So as you go through this process of refinement, in preparation for receiving the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, this is the time where we refine ourselves. We started this journey leaving Egypt, leaving our limitations. Now that we've left those limitations, it's time to sit and start examining ourselves and recognizing our perspective, our way of life, our way of thinking and feeling is just one way. and there are millions of ways, and they are all legitimate, and they all deserve our respect. So go out, tell the people that you love that you like them too. Hope you've enjoyed our discussion this evening. As always, you're welcome to email any and all questions to askmendy@gmail.com, askmendy@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to continuing the discussion next Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Next week, we'll also be starting our new JLI premiere series called The Art of Marriage, which is an in-depth look at marriages and relationships between men and women, whether you're thinking about getting married one day, tomorrow, or if you're currently married and want to take your marriage to the next level, or if you're divorced and want to learn where maybe your marriage went wrong, this course is for you. It starts in 10 days, so don't waste time. Go to our website, ChabadSouthTampa.com, or to myjli.com and register today. Good night. Have a wonderful evening.